Welcome, everybody. I'd like to invite you to and welcome you to our regularly scheduled meeting for June 28, 2021. At this time, I would like to call our meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, we'll accept any motions to approve the agenda if there's no amendments.
Mayor, I'd like to make one change to the agenda. I'd like to move item 4G on the consent agenda concerning CPAT to the regular agenda.
Very good.
With those changes, I'll make a motion to approve it.
Motion's been made with the exception of moving item 4G to the regular agenda.
Mahoney second.
It's been seconded by Ms. Mahoney. Any discussion? Comments? With that, we'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, we'll move 4G then to the regular agenda. Consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered routine. They have been made available to the City Council at least 2 days in advance of the meeting. The items will be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the agenda and considered in normal sequence. With that, I think you want to give us a review of the consent agenda. Thank you.
Yes,
Mr. Krugel.
thank you, Mayor Kirby, members of council. We have the city council meeting minutes from June 14th, our last meeting. We have disbursement approvals through June 28th, 2021. Those totaled just over 1.2 million. A couple to note, we made our first payment to Landmark Structures for the water tower project. We had first payment to Pember Companies for the Main Street project, and then we had our first payment for the South 5th Street extension to SM Henches. So a lot of construction. Those were all approved at the last council meeting and then included in this disbursement cycle. We have lawful gambling permits for Giant Days and then the St. Anne's Church as well. And then we have public dance permits, one for the Giant Days kickoff event and then one for the bar in Max Green Mill here in downtown. The item G has been moved to regular agenda item 7E. And then we have Giant Days kickoff event closing time extension. As a note, our public parks, our parks in Sueur close per city code at 10:30. What the request was is to keep those open until, or keep Legion Park open until 11 p.m. for that giant kickoff event. And then item I is we revised our public comment guidelines to incorporate virtual commenting. So if you're not aware, we have a virtual option for the public to participate here through GoToWebinar. And if somebody would like to participate in the public comment, we ask that they follow the guidelines, which includes reaching out ahead of time, providing a brief summary and just some basic information about what you're commenting on. Item J, personnel actions. We have some a lifeguard and a part-time position, and then to note a full-time sergeant. And what that is promotion from within police officer to sergeant position. And what that's doing is kind of setting the table for some future retirement that we may see, that we'll likely see next year in the police department. So nothing to know, we're not replacing that position that was promoted. That's just a sergeant position that takes on a couple extra duties for the police department. And then lastly, Minnesota River Congress resolution of support. Sorry that there's a typo in there, but resolution for support based on that water supply resolution that they talked about at the last meeting. And that's all we have on the consent agenda tonight.
Thank you, City Administrator Krugel. Anybody have any questions from Mr. Krugel? With that, I'll accept any motions to accept the consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Seconded? Anybody?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Krogman. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to public comment. Public comment provides an opportunity for the public to address the council on items that are not on the agenda. Comments will be limited to 5 minutes per person. Persons wishing to make a comment must sign up in advance of the meeting on the sheet provided and identify themselves by providing their name and address. At this time, do we have anybody who would like to share any comments?
Mayor Kirby, if I may, I believe everybody who has signed up is wants to participate in the public comment period of the public hearing for South Main Street. If anybody else has a public comment other than that, now would be the time to come forward.
With nothing else, we'll move on to the public hearing then. Public hearing, we'll ask Administrator Krugel, you want to take us down then?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Kirby. I'll go through the process for the public hearing. This is a process that is defined in state statute, chapter 429. What we're having tonight is the public hearing on the improvements to CSA 36, or the South Main area that we'll present on. The way this will work is we have City Engineer Beanfang here to present on the project, give an overview, and then after that presentation is done, what we'll do is we will look for a motion in a second to open the public hearing, allow the public to comment during that public comment period, and then City Council will then close the public hearing. And then from there, Corey can, I don't believe there's any other further action than to just hold the public hearing. So no action is required, but what we're doing is just holding the public hearing tonight. So with that, I'll turn it over to City Engineer Beanfang, where he can go over the presentation, and then we can go through the process.
All right, good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. It's good to be here in person tonight. So CSA 36 is what we're talking about. Thought it would be beneficial just to cover the improvement area again. We've talked about this a couple of times now, but it's County State Aid Highway 36 is the road that we're focusing on. The first and longest leg being the South Main Street portion, and really starting at that south city limits, and then which we're referring to as 3rd Street, but really where the city limits is, right where the pavement really changes condition on the south side of town, and then that would proceed then north up to Ferry Street. And then CSA 36 makes a turn there, continuing on Ferry then from the intersection of South Main up to 4th Street, basically where CSA 22 starts, and which has been recently re-improved. And then we're also looking at, as part of this project, the 1 block of Ferry Street going west then from the intersection of South Main down to the parking lot, referred to there as Smith Street or the west parking lot. And then also looking at improvement of that west parking lot, the full length of that then being from Ferry up to Bridge Street. So that's our project area. And then just a little summary here, how we got here. So this project, these project area has been talked about for, since most, I think, tangible since 2014, when the county proceeded with an improvement of the rural portion of 36. It did a reclaim project, bringing us up really to that south limit line of our project, that city limit line. There's a hard stop there where the city limit started. At the time this project was considered, things just didn't align financially or affordably for the city to proceed. But really the infrastructure need has really been governed since then. Looking at our CIP then and identifying the criticalness of this corridor, that was adopted in May 2020. And really that set the table then for the project timeline that we're on. Then initiating those discussions with council and county regarding the cost participation policy, approving that, and that memo of understanding then late last year, and then really, kicking off officially here our project timeline, starting with that first 429 of ordering the report, then accepting that report. And then a couple weeks ago, we had the open house, not a required step, but we found, good value in having that kind of informal, informational, and then bringing us here tonight to that official public improvement hearing. So we set the date, we ordered that when we accepted the report back in April. And then, as Jasper alluded to tonight, is just the process of holding the improvement hearing. And then we would come back next meeting and consider the adoption and of a resolution ordering the project and really proceeding into final plans. So you have a 6-month window from hearing to actual ordering the resolution. And we found value in having a couple-week gap there between the actual hearing, be able to consider comments that we receive, and then coming back with the official consideration. So the need really for this project is due to the failing road condition, as the surface as well as underground utilities. Council may recall last summer we did an emergency repair in the sanitary. We sent out some questionnaires. We've got back over 24 of those. A lot of emphasis on backed up sewer lines, frozen water services. So there's definitely some deficiencies on the utility side. So new sanitary sewer, water, storm sewer, full utility replacement. We're also looking at extending sanitary sewer, notably on the south end of Main Street there isn't sewer there, front yard or roadway sewer available today. So there's some uniqueness in services if they have them. Otherwise, we're looking at septic systems within city limits. So always something desirable to make better and improve upon. And we believe we're able to here get sewer to the south end of the city, to the south city limit. Evaluating new sidewalks. There is sidewalk on this corridor today. It's not the full length and it's not both sides. So we are evaluating new sidewalk on both sides. For folks that attended the open house, we presented a layout that didn't identify sidewalks on both sides. I think we got some feedback that folks wanted us to look into that. And so we are evaluating that. It's not too late, and looking at the feasibility there for sidewalks on both sides. And then a new curb and gutter and bituminous pavement section. This corridor is already urban today, and we would intend to keep that and just, I guess, newly construct that. And then this project is unique in the sense that we're going to be connecting into other improvements and really kind of finishing a pretty large improvement project with the CSA 22. On the right-hand side there, you see these in the last 10 years the CSA roads touched, and so that's I think it's a pretty big testament to the city of Sueur to be successful in delivering these. And then South Main Street as well, being in that intersection and connecting to that new road linkage here that's under construction now. So pretty cool opportunity to be able to kind of complete the grid there. With regards to the underground utility improvements, specifically with the sanitary sewer, the city, we have always had provisions of replacing private sewers services. Started with 2nd Street, continued with CSA 22, really looking at lead services or services that are blocked or not providing function. And we're going to continue that program. But then we're also looking at an opportunity to provide for new services. So those situations where maybe they're served by septic today, they have a failing system or a well, we have a couple of those. Really trying to encourage and provide an opportunity to do that as part of this project. There's cost savings, there's opportunity of utilizing that contractor due to this work on private property. And something should be very familiar. Just last meeting, we talked about that program of how to lay out the framework for that, the reimbursement piece of it. What is the city's commitment as far as the turnkey is kind of how we're identifying it, really all of that work scope, the interior plumbing, the sealing of the well or the abandonment of the septic. So, definitely something I would say is a little untraditional to a project like this, but we feel that we have, the tools in the toolbox to be successful and be able to offer this as a city. So I think it's a pretty unique and hopefully a benefit thing. This isn't a required program at this time. It's an optional one, but really trying to make full utilization of that new sanitary, especially and for folks that are having those frozen services or things that we can't just correct within the right of way. So on the right hand side there, everything to the right of way will be new, but then that would be a hard stop. And so this would give an opportunity to continue that improvement, continue that benefit. So more to come on this, but wanted to make sure that we're capturing this. So then project costs, the memo of understanding that's been approved, understand this is a city county partnership, being that it's a CSA route, and it really closely mimics the 22 project. So the roadway cost and the majority of the storm sewer costs, that would be the responsibility of the county. Roadway would also include the sidewalk. That's something important to note. The county does sponsor sidewalks in city limits. So that's a good offering. And then what is not then covered by the county was what's remaining is the city costs. Those are all the utilities. So sanitary and water, I should say, the sanitary and water utilities. And then the lesser majority of the storm sewer. The split is typically 55-45. And then something unique here that we didn't have on the 22 project though is we have some non-county roads, and that would be that one block of ferry as well as the parking lot. And then the city would be responsible for all those costs, and that's the reason for the separate rows there. So that would be surfacing and utilities. And then all that then sums over on the right hand side to about that 8.8 million. Another thing that we're looking at is electrical, taking advantage of an opportunity to do some underground conversion with this, get conduits in the ground, and some other electrical improvements. So we're including this in the project cost, but that'll be a separate project. That'll be a separate bond. So just something to keep in track. I guess keep in mind we're tracking it here, but it wouldn't be a part of the street and utility project specifically. So then a little bit on the financing side. I already talked about the two partners in the project as far as who's affording it, who's providing the cost. The primary would be the county, and they'll be looking at financing and providing their share through state aid funds, through their general operating fund. I believe that unlike the Turn Back project where they receive funding from the state as part of that Turn Back program, this is just a straight up county city project. So those costs will have to come from the county and the city. So they'll have to fund that through their normal operating fund. And then as part of a local road improvement program, it's a grant program that was on the last session that got approved late in 2020. There was a program where you could apply for competitive grants, and Sueur County put in an application for this project, and they were successful in the receipt of 1.25 million. One of the realities with this is though it's really geared towards state aid. So those grant funds are only available for street and storm. And so that's something that the county will be looking at utilizing here to cover their share. So I think that's a good value to the project for sure. And then city-wise, we're looking at funding through our utility enterprise funds. That's very consistent, sanitary, water, storm, and electric here. And then because of some of that street costs, we would be looking at utilizing some general fund. We have some budgetary amount already for street projects. We'd be looking to utilize that, and then special assessments through this Chapter 429 process. So then a little bit on the special assessments. So the city policy currently for these sewers, we establish assessments based on a special benefit appraisal, and we're in the process of having that completed. And we're anticipating a draft outcome of those recommended appraisals, hopefully here by the 1st of August. So we're working through that process here now. That'd be draft. Interest rate anticipated is that 3% or 1% above the bond sale. So the 22 project, that was at the 3% mark because of the lowness of the bond sale. The terms consistently here, we've been looking at a 15-year term for that assessment. And those are allowed to, there's a lot of payment options, but there is the allowance to have that recorded and rolled over to your taxes. And in that instance, then your first payment wouldn't be due until 2023. We'd be looking at finalizing the assessment process late in 2022. So just, I guess, folks can be noticed and aware then that first payment wouldn't be dealt 2023. Because we're still in the process of benefit appraisals, we've done two recent now. We've done the 2017 Second Street as well as the 2022 project. So we have some idea of range. I think residential, we feel a lot more confident on. We're looking at that $7,500 to $10,000 range. That'd be for a single family residential. And then the commercial range, there's just such variability in the special assessment. The value of the benefit appraisal is that it really hones in on the benefit to a particular property. So that commercial, they're really looking at the use of the property and really trying to hone in on what is that perceived benefit. But there's variability with that because of obviously the different uses. So then, I guess preview of next steps, as we talked, that the ask would then be the consideration to order the project and prepare into the final design, really getting those construction documents ready for bidding. That would be at the next meeting. And then we would look at, for the better part of the rest of this year, really emphasizing and solving that final design piece, really getting that detail developed. We would propose to hold another neighborhood meeting late in the year. That was where we'd have some final plans. We'd really get in the weeds a little bit more. We'd have some more answers to what we're planning for sure. Getting us geared up then to, that early part of 22, be ready for bids. We would come back to council to approve the plans and then move forward with bidding, or trying to get that competitive, early year bidding environment there in that February range. We would then have another neighborhood meeting for construction, really just emphasizing what to expect, really talking about timeline. We'd have a contractor secured then, what's the start date? And then that would allow us to start construction. And then we would then look to formally authenticate that assessment process in late 2022, I guess late summer maybe is a better way of putting it, September range. We would do another neighborhood meeting focused just on the assessments, and then we'd come back and hold our second obligated hearing, that assessment hearing. And then we would look to adopt late 2022, which then puts that payment of 2023. That's the reality of that. We are anticipating 1-year construction. I think it's pushing a bit the size of a project that you can build in 1 year, but that would be our expectation. I think we feel confident that that's achievable. And then, we would look at final completion, that final wear lift. Folks are probably familiar with how we left off that top lift of bituminous through the winter. We find a lot of value in that, certainly in Minnesota. So we wouldn't really achieve that final completion then until summer of 2023. And then if folks are interested, we can get the technology to work. We just have I think it's like a 2-minute video, just that kind of quickly describes what an improvement project is. So just gives a little better perspective of what to expect. Hopefully it'll work. It might just be an ad here, Rich, if you want to, yeah, skip it. Is there volume, Jasper? Oh, maybe not.
It should.
I can just kind of work through it. So it's talking first about the water main here. We'll just ad lib it, but and it's describing how obviously with the water treatment plant, that's where the water comes from, gets into the distribution main, and then we would propose to improve those. And the sanitary sewer, that's the deeper utility. That would be the other utility that's improved. Then followed lastly then by the storm sewer. That's generally the shallowest. And then in the case of this 36 project, that's a direct outlet to the river. And then talks about the roadway surface. There's the bituminous followed by aggregate, followed by a sand layer, and then the curb and gutter as I described in your urban corridor to collect that drainage and identify those boulevards. This would be exactly the case of 36, where there'd be a grass boulevard with a sidewalk then. And then those other utilities that are in the boulevard as well. Communications, and in this case would also be the city electric. So apologize about the volume there, but. So then my last slide then here, Council, Mr. Mayor, then is just to I guess, again, identify that no action required tonight. We just asked for that feedback from the public hearing. Staff would be given direction, and then we come back next meeting with that formal resolution then.
Thank you, Mr. Bienfang. Before we entertain any motions to open up the public hearing, I'd like to ask any council members if they have any questions. Nothing at this time. So we entertain a motion then for opening public hearing. I'll entertain that motion if anybody has one.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Swanberg. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Public hearing is now open. Do we have anybody?
Mayor Kirby, if I may, if
Yep.
anybody would like to participate in public comment, now would be the time. I know we have a few people signed up. We just ask if you do participate, come up to the podium, state your name and your address for the record, and state your comment. If there's questions, you know, it's fairly informal. And if we can answer questions, we'll try. Some questions we might not be able to answer. So if there is anybody who would like to participate, now would be the time.
I didn't sign up, by the way. My name is Eric Chadwick. I live at 548 South Main Street. I went to the meeting on June 9th. Spoke to Mr., well, I'll say Corey because I can't pronounce his last name, to find out what the situation was, what was being proposed. And if you're familiar with South Main, you know that the sidewalk on the west side of the road ends at my driveway. And there's two other houses beyond my property. We don't have any sidewalk on the west side. There's also no sidewalk on the east side. And I raised that issue with Corey, and he said that, and I'm not trying to put words in his mouth, just to recap what we discussed, that it was a preference of the county that there be sidewalks on both sides of the street. And so I raised the issue when I looked at the plans. It didn't look like there was anything for the east side. And he said he would take that into consideration. I think he mentioned that tonight when he made his remarks. My issue, I think it would be appropriate to put it on the east side. I think there's more reason to put it on the east side if you're going to do one versus both sides. I think if I've had conversations with neighbors and they're concerned about the taxes that are being incurred in this city, the many other plans that are under consideration, and the ability of themselves to stay in this town because of taxes rising. And so I talked to Scott the other day about this issue to educate myself some more. And one of the things that I mentioned to him and I asked was, none of the property owners that I know of 548 and beyond are asking for a sidewalk to be put in on the west side. And it would take some substantial, at least with my property, it's sloped quite heavily right there by the street. So there's going to take quite a bit of work to put it in. And I view it as a sidewalk kind of to nowhere. There's nothing developed on the edge of town. As far as I know, there's nothing in the plans to be developed down there. Scott mentioned that maybe there was thought there would be a bicycle path at some point in time, but I don't know when that's going to happen. So I think if anybody's looking to save money, this is one place that money could be saved. I just don't think there's a need for a sidewalk on that side of the road. I also think, and I will comment, and then I'll finish my remarks, is the truck traffic that comes in from the south is routinely 40, 45, 50 miles an hour. And I raised the issue with the representative of the county, and I said, look, can you do something about that if you're going to put this sidewalk in? And he was no help. I said maybe a roundabout or something to slow the trucks down. He told me that was inappropriate and had no suggestions for a way to stop those trucks. I think a concern I have, if you're going to put a sidewalk, you're going to encourage pedestrians. You're going to improve or increase pedestrian traffic in that area where you've got trucks coming in at 50 miles an hour. So I think that if the city decides to proceed with that sidewalk on the southern end of town there on Main Street and does nothing about those trucks coming in, it's irresponsible, because you're just looking for an accident to happen. I wave at, flag down, do things all the time with the truckers, and they just laugh when they drive through. They never slow down. You can put up that speed limit thing that we put up, I don't know, every 6 months or a year. Maybe they slow down then, I don't know. But I think unless there's a police presence sitting out there constantly and ticketing to make it hurt, they're not going to stop. They're not going to slow down. So I would suggest that first, I don't think a sidewalk's necessary. I think there's a way to save money. My reading of the initial plan said that this whole project was to replace not to put in new things anyway. Maybe I misread it, but that was my read of the documentation. I don't think it's necessary, but if you are going to do it, I think you ought to seriously consider a way to get that truck traffic to slow down. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Eric, will you share your last name again with me? I didn't.
Sure, Chadwick?
Okay. Chadwick.
Correct.
Thank you, Eric.
Yep, thank you very much.
Appreciate you sharing that with us.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
Yes. My name is Laurel Whalen, and I live at 628 South Main. So I have the last place on the west side of the road. And I thank Eric for bringing up some very good ideas. Number one, I don't see that there is a need for a sidewalk on the west side. Again, that is the structure would, there'd be a huge expense on that side. I do see it beneficial for the family members being on the east side of the road. I'm going to concur. I moved into the Sueur. I've been a resident around the Sueur since 2006, but I moved into South Main last November, and I immediately became appalled at the number of truck traffic that not only comes into the city, but leaves the traffic. My house literally shakes when they come through. The J breaks, I have complained to the city many times. They put out the little sign. It may slow down for a little bit, 2-3 days. The other day when I was coming into town, I noticed out by the airport road, there is a truck traffic that is supposed to be detoured. Why is that not being enforced? I think that the city of Le Sueur needs to consider the residential safety. There's little kids right next door to me. There's a daycare center. Those little kids are coming out and meeting their parents on the road. There is no way when trucks come around that corner, if a little kid was to run out in that road, that they're going to see. I understand that a vehicle hit a young lady several years ago because of the speed. The city needs to do something regarding that end. The other question is the deterioration of the road caused by the impact a lot of the heavy traffic that comes in from those trucks? And what is the city going to do to, they're going to put in new roads, they're going to put in new septic system, water system. But if they don't take care of that heavy traffic, how long again before you're going to be replacing the road? You're going to be replacing the sewer, because our city streets are not set up for that type of impact. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Whalen. I appreciate your comments and sharing your views with us. Anybody else?
My name is Sarah Eiten. I live at 707 South Main Street. We're the last house on Main Street. And I was, as other people have been bringing up, truck traffic is terrible. They have to be going 50 when they hit our house at times. I'm so glad our kids are in their 40s and have moved away, because it is a dangerous situation, and they don't seem to slow down at all. And as for a sidewalk, the sidewalk goes in front of my house. It's going to be by my front door. And I'm not really too thrilled about that. It's really going to take a lot of our front yard away, which we don't have. And I really don't want a sidewalk on my doorstep. So that's my only comments right now.
Thank you, Ms. Eiten. Anybody else?
Yeah, my name is Peter Shepner, and I've been a business owner on South Main Street at 228 South Main for 30 some years. And my first concern was making sure that we had the businesses open. You know, we want to make sure that we're open till April 15th, but I think that's been resolved. Second thing is that most people in this room realize my wife and I did a really stupid thing, and we bought my dad's restaurant. And we're slowly in the process of remodeling that, and we're hoping to have that open sometime this fall, early next spring. And I just want to make sure that we have access to that restaurant. And I'm sure Mickey with Wise Furniture and everybody, and I'm not sure as far as the time frame of, you know, what's going to be open or what's going to be closed at what time, but hopefully you keep it into consideration that, you know, for us having people come to the office and to the restaurant and Mickey making deliveries and that type of thing, that's all taken into consideration. So we have it. You know, as far as the sidewalk concerns, my wife and I have walked that for years, all of these. And right now from our office down south, the sidewalks are terrible. You know, I think they definitely need to be improved, whether it's on both sides or how it's done. You know, I think about Elmwood where, you know, when I saw that first, I thought this is silly to be putting the sidewalks in because I thought it's going to look terrible. And I absolutely think it's gorgeous. And I think that can be such a main improvement to South Main Street. So people get out and walk, you know, whether it's on both sides of the street or just one side of the street or whatever they come up with. But again, my wife and I walk that a couple times a week. And right now the sidewalks are terrible and they do need to be improved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shepner. Appreciate your comments. Anybody else? Otherwise, we can take a motion at this time to close public comment. So move. Motion's been made.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan, for seconding it. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Public comment is now closed. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 7A, final electric rates and cost of services study. Blair, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, folks, for coming.
So I'm Blair Metzger with DGR Engineering, and we were talking about electric rate study that I've been working on for the last several months. I'm going to try to keep it short and brief and not get into the details because there's lots of details that you really wanted to get into, and I'll try not to bore everybody. So the items to be covered real quick. I'm going to talk a little bit about the background and why we do rate studies. Then I'll talk about the overall big picture financial status of the utility. Talk about some ideas and proposals we're having that we brought forth to reclassify and restructure rates, and then talk about what that means to ratepayers. So that's what I'm going to cover here this evening. I'm going to talk about the background real quick. I have a memo in your packet, I believe. It's in there. I'll just cover the topics real quickly. We started this in April of 2020. Through the whole COVID thing, we had several meetings of different formats and so forth. I provided an update to you remotely back in February. As I've been getting feedback from people, I've been integrating that into the overall proposed rates here. We had a personnel and budget committee meeting in May where we spent hours going through numbers and talking about things and going through a lot of paper. Made final revisions to those rates after that meeting, and then now have come up with what I would call the final proposed rate schedule for you to consider, which if you were to do that and get them prepared for adoption and implementation in 2022, the rest of the year would kind of be spent with staff educating people and explaining to people what's happening and how the rates are changing. So that's the background. The slide up on the screen is the next topic, which is a financial conclusion. So in order to do these rate studies, is kind of a three-step process. One is a big picture financial look at things. How much rates or how much revenue do we need to have to make everything work on your utility? The next thing we do is a cost of service study, and finally come up with rates to propose and to implement. So the first piece again is the financial part. We did a 10-year detailed projection of your electric utilities finances. It should be a copy in the packet, I believe. Lots of numbers. I'm not planning to go through them, but they're all there just to show you the level of detail we go to try to get things captured and keep your utility in good condition. Our firm also did a companion study, a capital improvements plan that outlined a number of projects that need to be done on your electric system to keep it in good shape. And so those are all integrated into that. So big picture, the revenue level of your utility, your electric utility, is adequate for the short term. So in other words, the total dollars coming in is okay, is adequate. It'll cover the obligations that you have for the next couple of years. As you start doing capital improvements and start spending money on projects and start bringing in some debt to do those projects, we'll need to make some adjustments in rates, but nothing major. That's kind of the good news, I guess. Any increases will be pretty minor and could be spread out over several years. And then the other piece of this that we're going to try to do is in the past, your electric utility was running pretty lean in terms of reserves, and that's not a position you want to be in, I don't think, because things can happen where you need some reserves. And so we're proposing, as time goes by, over 10 years, to build those reserves up to a level that are more comparable to what people typically have for a utility of your size. Nothing overnight. It'll take time. It'll take 10 years to get there, but I think it's a good goal. So that's part of this as well. So if you can move to the next slide. So the other, some of the other pieces that we did of this is we looked at rate classifications, and what I mean by that is how are they described, and what rate classes do we have? And so we're proposing a few changes there, primarily in the commercial or industrial classes, not your residential customers. That's all pretty straightforward. But we're proposing to make a few changes. And if we do that, we can then set rates that are more closely tied to the actual cost to serve the customers. And so as we went through this, we're adding a couple classes and doing some things like that. Probably the biggest change is the last bullet point there, your what we call intergovernmental or other city type of loads. We're going to charge them the full cost to serve. In the past, they've been getting a subsidized rate, and we're going to propose to put them on the regular rates and charge them what they really cost to serve. That'll have some impacts on some of those other utilities and so forth in the city, but it's not huge overall, but there will be some impacts there that will need to be budgeted for, and I think staff is aware of that. So, all right, so then the next, probably the biggest piece of this whole thing and what we spent the most time on was how we structure rates. And what I mean by that is how do you charge customers and what's on their bill and what types of things get charged for. And how is that all done? And so this is where we spent the most time, and I think we have some pretty good recommendations here that I think are really will be helpful to your utility. First bullet point there is we're going to implement what I call seasonality into your rates. So what that means is the cost of power that you pay to MMPA varies depending if it's summer or winter. So you pay more in the summer than the winter, which is kind of normal. Typically, rates haven't varied based on that, but they should. And so we're going to start moving toward that. So that we're proposing rates that are higher in the summer than the winter, so that customers get that signal that try to conserve if you can in the summer. So we're going to build that into all rate classes. You currently have it in your existing rate schedule for some of your larger customers, but we're going to bring it in and do it for all customers to get that message sent. Second piece of that is the time of use component. So in addition to costs varying depending on the time of year, your costs also vary on the time of day and the time of week. So in other words, during on-peak times or during the middle of the day, it costs you more to buy power. At night or off-peak times, it's less. And so the utility industry is working toward trying to send that signal again to customers to conserve during high-cost times. And if you think about the whole world changing toward electric vehicles, if you think about how that's going to work, what needs to happen there is people charge their vehicles at night, not during the day. And so the whole electric utility industry is going to work their way toward these types of rates eventually, because we're going to need to signal that to customers to not charge during the day. So we're planning to start making that transition here. We're not going to do it at the residential level or small commercial. It's going to be for your larger customers only to begin with. And so that we'll get that implemented, get that process going. Your metering that needs to be in place to do that is in place. And so we just have to start implementing that. And as time goes by, we'll start bringing that to other rate classes as well. And but for now, it's just for the very largest customers. Third bullet point there is another one that's kind of something that's in the electric utility industry, one of those things that's really a big trend, and that is part of your rates includes a fixed customer charge, so a flat amount every month. And really, those need to be increased. A lot of the cost of providing service to customers is fixed. It doesn't vary. It's just really a fixed cost. And so over time, we need to start building that to a higher level and taking away from the variable piece. And so all classes are going to see an increase in the customer charge according to our current rates that we're going to propose. And so that'll be something that every customer will see a bit of an increase in, is the fixed piece of their bill. Last item on this page is a minimum demand provision. So there are a few customers that are what I call seasonal in nature. In other words, they're just there during the summer or in the fall. We need to make sure that we charge a minimum amount of demand for those customers so that they're paying their share and not being subsidized by others. If we go to the next slide. A couple more pieces of this that we're bringing into this into the proposed rates. You currently have, as part of your rate schedule, a franchise fee and an underground fee. That's basically an adder to the bill. We're going to eliminate those, move those into the regular rate base. The revenues that you're collecting for that will still be collected through regular rates, but they won't be a separate charge. And I think that'll simplify things, and it will make it'll make it an easier way to do things, and will be simpler to implement. And then finally, the last thing is you've got an energy cost adjustment piece to your bills that get charged every month. And we're gonna propose eliminating that for the time being, or putting it on hold, if you will. The only real reason to have that is if your rates, your costs vary. So if the cost from MMPA varies, if that comes in and changes a lot, you want to have that so that you can pass that cost on and not run into trouble. But if costs are fairly stable like they have been, you can budget for that every year and build that in and not have to be varying people's charges every month. And so we're going to propose to do that. We'll leave it in the rate schedule. If down the road things change, we don't know what's going to happen in the utility industry. Things can change, but things are very stable right now. So we're going to stop. We're going to propose stop charging that every month, but leave it in the rate schedule in case it needs to be activated in the future. So those are the gamut of the rate restructuring proposals that we're making for this. So go ahead and change. So the next slide, and you should have a copy of this in your packet as well as the actual rate schedule. And so if you look at that, I'm not going to go through each one of those, but should you agree to do this and you're satisfied with where we're at with all this, we have written up an actual rate schedule that you can implement that would then go into effect the beginning of next year. Just a couple things to point out. You'll note that you can see on the first page there and up on the screen is the residential service. And if you look at it close, you can see that there's a June through September amount and also one October through May. And the one in the summer is higher than the winter, as I mentioned earlier. So that's the same concept we're going to do for every rate class. Higher charge in the summer, lower in the winter, and to help send that signal to try to conserve during higher cost times. So that schedule is in your packet and it has all the details and explains all the different restructuring and reclassifications that we're proposing. And it would be implemented in January 2022 if you go ahead and accept this. So then the last thing that's important is, well, what does all this mean? And I guess that's the real question. Is the real concern here is what's it going to mean to customers? And so what I have up here, this is a very simplified explanation of what it means for your different customer classes. I've got page after page after page of spreadsheets to look at if you wanted to see the details, and there's all kinds of information that can be provided if you wish. But Just real quickly, I'll go through the impacts in the different classes. So the residential customer, again, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have a higher cost in the summer, lower in the winter. So what's going to really happen is the summer costs are going to go up, and you'll pay less in the winter is what it really works out to be for most customers. It'll depend a bit on how much you use and different things like that. But for the most part, most people would price a little more cost in the summer and a little less in the winter. Overall, your average user, which uses 600 kilowatt hours a month, which is a pretty small amount, will see about a $5.36 per month increase for that customer. And again, it'll depend a little bit on usage. Those that use a lot will probably not see as much of an increase, because you also remember we're increasing the base charge or the fixed charge. And so that's really kind of where that change happens, is at the customer charge level. But the impact would be about a little over $5 a month for the average user. The general service commercial, so that's your smallest commercial customers, they'd see a very minor increase. Again, it would be higher in the summer but lower in the winter. Kind of averages out to almost nothing, just 57 cents per month for the average user. And then your bigger industrial customers, the large general service, what we're calling small industrial, and then the large industrial. I mentioned we did a cost of service study. Without getting into a lot of details, what we try to figure out is how much should each customer class pay of the total, and that's the cost of service study. And essentially what's going on is right now those customers are paying a little bit too much of the total based on our study work. And so they're going to actually see a decrease in total. Now it's going to really vary depending on the usage pattern, and it gets really complicated because it depends on how they use electricity and so forth. But in general, most of the large customers, industrial and those and so forth, will see a decrease in their cost of power based on what our results of our study show. Then we have a couple rural classes. Right now, all the rural customers pay the same amount. We're going to split them into small rural and large rural. And again, depending on where they're at, they're going to see, both classes will see an increase. The small rural customers about $7.28 per month in terms of dollars. The large rural, again, depends on their usage pattern. Some will see some pluses, some see some minuses, but overall the total for the class will increase about 9.9%. So again, lots of detail. If you want to see more information, we have all kinds of spreadsheets that can be provided for you to look at if you wish to see that. So just to summarize then real quick, what we need to do next, I guess, is to make any final changes. If there's feedback from anybody that needs to be taken into consideration and integrated into this, we can do that. And once that's done, then you will need to adopt and approve the rate schedule for 2022. And then I think staff is committed to, at that point, starting to educate people on the different impacts that will be felt by the customers. So that's kind of the next steps. I really don't have any action that I've been proposing tonight. Just wanted to bring an update and then try to answer questions now. So if there are any.
You have a comment, question?
If I could, I want to elaborate a little bit more on the education process. We've been meeting internally to figure out what that is, because that's a big component when these things change, to get the information out to the public. So we have these various rate classes, and we'll come at it with a multi-tiered approach for each class. Anything from newsletters to websites, social media, to actual in-person meetings for each of those classes, so they can kind of understand. Blair has some great tables that allow you to look at what the current rates are with the proposed rates. I think those were shared maybe at the last city council or personnel and budget committee meeting. We intend to have those out so you can look at your bill, and then you can say, well, I'm at, let's say, 800 kilowatt hours per month, and I'm a residential. Here's what I'm paying now. Under the proposed structure, here's what it'll be. It'll be really pretty easy to look at that. So we fully intend to get that, and that's part of the reason why we're doing this now instead of in October, November. So we have some more time to educate the public on these changes that are proposed for 2022. So likely the time frame will be depending on feedback we get tonight. There may be an agenda item on the July 12th meeting to look at adopting these rates for 2022. And that'll indicate to staff, now we'll start the education process and really hope to get everybody up to speed prior to January 1, 2022, when these will actually go into effect.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I have some questions for
Sure.
Blair, if I may.
Please, yeah.
Blair, I want to be real clear. You did indicate that your firm, you particularly have worked with the capital improvement aspect of the electrical system.
Yes.
Obviously, the rate we pay to MMPA, our electrical wholesale provider, we're a member of that agency. That's going to be set. They're going to give us a price and we're going to work with that. But I'd like to focus on the capital side, the needs we have to maintain, improve, and keep our system safe and efficient. How much of all of this involves that latter aspect, and how important is that? What's the condition that we're in now that we're trying to achieve? Maybe another way to put it.
Yeah, so when we do those capital improvements studies and plans, we look at your system, we build a computer model, we look at things and say, okay, if you lost this piece of equipment, could you serve everybody without having outages that extend long periods of time? We look at conditions of the system and how, what are your existing facilities like? Or do they need to be replaced because of age? All those sorts of things. And so from that, then we put together a 10-year plan that is got costs associated with it and so forth. And so those are all built into my projections here. So we have that in here. We know that's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to cost, I don't know how many total dollars, $6-7 million maybe over 10 years. We try to spread those out so that they're not all at once. We're showing it being funded by bonds or by debt issuances and spread those out over time. Obviously, electric infrastructure is long-lived stuff. I mean, it lasts a long time, 40, 50 years. And so we spread the cost recovery of those out as long as we can to make sure we can, not hit customers any harder than we need to cost-wise. But yeah, that's a big piece of this. I mean, that was a really important part of this, and we made sure that we kind of delayed a little bit on my part of the work until we had those numbers pulled together, so that we could integrate those in and make sure that you need. One of the things the municipal utility can do and does well is provide the service at a higher level than other utilities might, and so that's just super critical that that's in here, and we have it built into this. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Blair, I have one real quick question. I
Yes.
think you answered it through your presentation, but I just want a little bit of affirmation for everybody. We devoted a lot of time and resources into putting new meters in a few years ago. This new system will adapt real well. It'll be real accurate as far as, changing things over.
Yes, and not only that, but it'll also allow us to implement the types of rates we're talking about here, where we bring in the time of use and those kinds of things that old meters didn't. You go out and read the meter manually and it told you what to use for the month, but that was the best you could do. The new meters can do time of use, can tell you how much you're using at any given time of the day, and so we can implement those different kinds of rates that charge different amounts at different times of the day. So yes, and that's all in place. I think you're gathering data now. The thing I like about how we're doing it here is we're starting with a small number of customers, but we're going to be gathering data for a larger number. And so when the day comes to implement this to other customers, we'll have some data. And for me as a rate maker, without having good data, such as time of use data, it's kind of a challenge, kind of a shot in the dark, and makes me scared. I don't want to run you out of money and those kinds of things. And so that's good to be ahead of that, to have those meters in place, gather that data. So when the day comes, we'll have that as a basis for setting rates. So
Perfect. Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a couple
Go ahead.
comments. So when we looked at water rates, they shared comparisons to neighboring communities. Do you have any understanding of what rates are in neighboring communities and where this would put us?
I can get that or provide that. Yes, I haven't done that yet. I mean, some want that, some don't. So I can put that together.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
One thing that I think we heard very clearly when talking about water rates was the concern on the residential side with increase costs there. I guess I'm concerned that they're going to be seeing another monthly increase to water rates. And is this increase only for 2022, or is this going to be seen out in the future as well?
So the way my projections are currently is that, so they will see this increase as we restructure and reset everything for 2022. I would not expect any rate adjustments for another couple years after that. And then at that point, it would be just general increases needed to like pay debt. So if you need a 2% increase, so we can accommodate some debt, everybody would get a 2% increase. So this rate restructuring thing happens one time, and then you stay with that. And then if you have to raise rates for the whole system to pay for debt, then you just raise everybody the same amount. I think I had 3 or 4, 2 or 3% increases in the say the 3 to 7 year time frame, so that everybody would see that same increase. But they're fairly minor. I mean, and they're not every year. So I think once we get this restructuring done, it should be fairly. I don't want to say it's not non-consequential. You know, it's consequential whenever there's a rate increase. I get that, but not big increases unless something really changes that we're not seeing right now. So. Mhm.
Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you,
Okay,
Mr. Metzger. I appreciate your help tonight and your devotion to this. Thank you.
Yeah.
Moving on to item 7B, second reading of ordinance 592, land sale. And at this time, what we would do is accept a motion for waive the second reading. Is that the way we're going to do this?
That is correct. Yeah, there's no new information on this from the last meeting. We waived the first reading of this ordinance. What this would allow us to do is publish the ordinance in the paper 7 days after it goes into effect, and then we can effectively transfer this land to the Fahey's and kind of finalize this project. So no new changes to what was presented at the last meeting, but we are looking to waive the second reading of ordinance 592 and then adopt it and we'll publish it in the paper.
Thank you. I'll entertain then any motions to waive the second reading of ordinance 592.
So moved.
Mr. Swanberg, seconded by Mr. Sullivan. Thank you. All those in favor?
Wait, excuse me.
I'm sorry, discussion.
I have a question. Are we only waiving this or are we adopting it also, since it's a second reading?
Clarity?
Yes, you're waiving the second reading and adopting it.
Right, because that was
Yep.
not said.
Yep,
It
sorry.
was just said to waive the second. So
Okay.
can we either start over or whatever we have to do, please?
So
Sure, I can amend the motion to waive the second reading and adopt the ordinance.
Second.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
a motion's been made to waive and adopt ordinance 592, and it's been seconded by Mr. Sullivan. All those any discussion, comments, concerns?
And again, it's to both waive and adopt.
Correct. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Moving on to item 7C, well number 8, acceptance and award contract. Mr. Beanfang.
All right, good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council again. So tonight we're here to discuss well 8. We've discussed this a couple different times as well, but have an update tonight of the bid opening and are asking consideration to accept an award. So a summary of project timeline, just again to recapture, I always like doing this. So City Council, we prepared a comprehensive plan almost about 2 years ago now, identifying, kind of what Blair was talking about, really looking at the water system plan and identifying capital improvements. Based on that plan, then there was an acceptance of the plan and that recommendation for CEP improvements. And one of those improvements was looking at redundancy in the municipal wells, the drilling, construction of a new well. Based on that consideration and that recommendation, then we moved forward with the final design, did a well siting study. We're before council a couple of different times in acceptance of that study, approving the plans, and then that really brings us forward here tonight. We opened bids on the 17th, and then we are here tonight then to ask for your consideration to accept, and then ultimately are recommending an award. 2 bids were received for the project, which I think we were hopeful, definitely you're always hopeful to have more than one and to get 2. And I think what's even more telling here is just how competitive the bids were. to have two bids. When you have two bids, you like them to be tight and competitive. I think it really shows what's the value of the project and what is the, what is going rate. So I think the bids were for a midsummer bid like this. I think we were really pleased to have the two and have the tightness. Magni Construction is a company that we're familiar with, and we feel they have the competency and the knowledge to do this project. They're a general contractor, so they'll be looking at doing the well house. This project is for a new municipal well and a well house primarily. So they'd be a partner in that well house, that site construction. The other big part of that is the drilling of the new municipal well. And they have a sub, or they identified that would be completed by Trout Construction, which we were excited for at a staff level as well. They have the knowledge and expertise, and I think if we had to pick, that's who we would have chose. So that's great in a competitive bid. The other element of this is getting the water from the new well, which is proposed to be by the middle tower there on Kingsway, getting that water to the water treatment plant up on Bowright. So we have a raw water main, raw being that it's not treated yet, it's just straight out of the ground going to the treatment plant. We have that proposed on the east side, then getting connection from this new well to that treatment plant. And then because of the close proximity to the water tower, that middle tower there by the dog park, we're doing some upgrades and just some improvement to make sure that our well house and that tower are communicating. They're both parts of the water system, and so making some upgrades and some accommodations because we're right there, and we're putting this new well house there. Really the big need for this new municipal well is to provide backup to well 7. Well 7 is the primary producer of the city. It by far exceeds all the other wells as far as production, and so there's a lot of criticalness with that well. As you can see on the graphic there, we've got the three wells right along Bowright. That's where well 7 resides. And so just wanting to be able to provide redundancy, provide relief, and be able to still supply water to supplement. So that's really the governing for well 8. Well 8, as you can see, is proposed there by the middle tower. And then we have one other well by the community center, that's well 6. So really kind of all congregated here. And then the reality then of well 8. There is a raw water line that goes along Kingsway today, but because of the new well and the intent to be able to produce water of the significance that we're expecting out of well 8, we weren't able to tap into that existing raw water. Tightness of the utilities on the west side of Kingsway, there's just an awful lot in the ground there, really primed and required us to install new raw water. So just I guess a capture of why that was required. Well construction to drill this well is going to take some time, so we're anticipating that this would start in 2021, but several months, many months would be dedicated just to the drilling of the well. I think we would start to see the actual completion of the well house and the driveway and the raw water. That very well could be not till 2022, but we do expect a completion by end of next year. So kind of in line with the tower project in a way. Water fund, looking at this, we've been talking about this now, the CIP for the water fund, there were some high priority projects. And so we've been talking about this water fund now for a couple different times. As part of the bids, the bids came in good. It was under estimate of what we expected, but an increase to the annual rate. We're projecting about a 0.25% increase from what we talked about at the water tower. And so that would be captured here. The screen projection, we were talking about a 2 to 3 year increase for the water tower. I think we're looking at about another 0.25% here for the well. That'd be through year 2025. That's what we studied out for our rate study. That averages to about $2 per month for that average residential customer. And again, the message is consistent in the sense that this is to lock the CIP as we studied, pre both the tower and the well project. And so I think at staff level, I've messaged this before, we're acknowledging that there's going to probably have to be some shifting to the CIP. We understand that. I think it's really the emphasis of these high priority projects. These are ones that the system really needs, and some of those that maybe are lesser priority, we're looking at shifting those out and have the potential here to manipulate that rate. If it's under 3 or whatever that target will be later this summer, as we really start to look at solving that, I think that's what we're trying to communicate to council is we have some flexibility here. We're just holding it because that's obviously what we projected when we first did this rate study. So just trying to go back to that. And then, talking with the financial advisor, with Mr. Sweeney and working with our staff, we believe this project is deemed financially feasible. The bids came as expected. Overall project financing, we're proposed to utilize a PFA loan. We did get the clearance letter here just late last week to officiate that process, and the value with the PFA loans is the low interest, which in the recent market has not been as critical as maybe it was years before, but we are starting to see some trending, I think, and so I think there's value. 1.5 I think is conservative, and we'd like to be sub that in the final bond sale. So there's obviously some financial advantage to doing the PFA loan. And really, when we look back at that CIP, this well was the highest priority project. This was the #1 on that list, and so just I guess reemphasizing the need for that. So then that leads us to the recommendation, and the ask of council tonight is to accept the 2 bids that we received, and then ultimately proceed with the award, executing their resolution 031 for municipal well 8 and well house improvements to Magny Construction.
Thank you, Mr. Beanfang. Before we entertain any motions, anybody have any questions for City Engineer Beanfang? Mr. Sullivan.
Corey, maybe you said this and I missed it, but when do you anticipate start if we award tonight?
Yeah, in conversation with Magny, it won't be immediate. I would say by end of summer is what we're looking at right now.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you for your presentation. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
City Council, we will now look for accepting the contract by approving R 2021-031 for municipal well number 8, well house improvements to, is it Magny Construction Incorporated? If I can entertain a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
Second.
Seconded. Thank you, Mr. Schleter. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Regular agenda item 7D, well number 8, construction phase services.
Mayor Kirby, members of City Council, because this project requires engineering, this next item is to talk about what that means and to potentially award that to our engineering group. So we do have Rich Kuchera here, the Public Services Director, to go over this item.
Good evening, Mr. Kuchera.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, me and Corey talked about this. We tried to get this stuff put together so when we have projects like this coming to council, we have the project itself leading into the construction phase services. So that way the council would see everything kind of tied together. Construction phase services for this project, like Corey said, it's going to take over a year. The big thing, it's, they're estimating 1,200 hours, which obviously there's over half a full-time staff. And with the PFA financing on this project, there will be a lot of work to do. Obviously, all the documentations of Made in America must be provided, and they will be responsible for that. The testing, they will be responsible for daily reports, inspection, observation, final pump sizing when we get there, when we finally get all the way down there, find the water, coordination with Minnesota DNR and Department of Health on the water mains and the well. And the big one is providing wage compliance monitoring for as all workers on this project must be paid prevailing wage. So next slide, please. So staff is asking the City Council to approve the proposal from Bolton and Mink for the construction phase services for this project at $174,700.
Thank you, Mr. Kuchera. Before we move on to any motions, anybody have any questions for Mr. Kuchera?
Rich, I'm assuming we have this budgeted as part of the project initially?
Yes, this is budgeted with the project, and has been factored into the bond sale.
Anybody else? With that, we'll move on to the recommended action of the city council approve the proposal for Bolton Inc. for construction phase services for a total fee of $174,700. We have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Need a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Krogman. Any discussion, comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to regular agenda item 7E, comprehensive plan action team dissolution. This is what we moved off the consent agenda onto the regular agenda. Administrator Kruger, you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, I can talk briefly about the comprehensive plan action team, or as we call it, CPAT. It was one of the first, I guess, commissions that was started since I've been administrator here, and I think there was a real emphasis on the comprehensive plan when we adopted that in 2016, and then really, what are we going to do next? And CPAT kind of was assigned that role and took on that role. It kind of, I would say, fizzled out. We lost people resigned. We weren't able to fill those positions. We've actively been marketing it ever since, I think the last meeting was in February of 2019. We haven't been able to fill any of the vacancies on that on that action team. So it has remained vacant, and they have not met since that day. Looking into the planning commission and the establishment of that in city code, really, if the goal is to have a group or a body look at the comprehensive plan and really own that document, section 33.042 of the Sueur City Code really does assign that to the planning commission, and really that comprehensive plan lives within that group. So I think it's safe to say that the CPAT has done some good work. They've kind of really made it us as a group really emphasize and focus on the comprehensive plan. I think it's safe to say that moving forward, if this is dissolved, the planning commission is up to that. I think they're eager to have work assigned to them and focus on these things. So I think it's safe to say that we'll still continue to focus on the comprehensive plan, even without CPAT. Even, we haven't met for, a little over 2 years. So, everything we do is really tied to the comprehensive plan. And I think if anything, it really helped us accomplish that and prioritize that. So I can entertain any questions or comments, or we can discuss this further if you'd like.
Mayor,
Yeah.
the reason I put this on the regular agenda instead of the consent agenda, I did have some concerns with dissolving this. I do feel that the comprehensive plan action team will have a function going forward as we start to deviate from the comprehensive plan. It's just some more eyes on this. CPAT is also a tool of the planning commission. So that was my biggest concern, is if we're getting rid of one of their tools, I'd sooner the planning commission give us a recommendation to dissolve this instead of staff recommending we dissolve this.
Anybody else have any comments?
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor. I was involved with the forming of this team on council at the time. Our concern was that somebody shepherd the comprehensive plan and look at it overall across all areas of city functions. One of the things that we have not done that frankly should have been done was to have an annual forum. Now, we've tried different ways of doing that, but that's a good example of something that really we should be doing annually. I agree with Councilman Schlueter that we could refer this to the Planning Commission and they could decide what to do. We could basically say that the Planning Commission is responsible for the Comprehensive Plan Action Team. My problem with that is I'm not sure how to do that except to defer it until the next meeting and figure out how that's to be worded, because it's a little bit awkward. I have no problem getting rid of it the way it's been established now, but making sure that there's some subgroup of the planning commission that's really paying full attention to the comprehensive plan and what we're doing to carry it out. Notice the word action. It isn't just there's this team that sort of knows about it. We have to make sure this thing is being implemented, or perhaps even that there's changes to it that need to be made. We made a big plan that goes to 2040. When you make a plan like that around 2015, if you don't make changes to it, even midway, there's something wrong. So that's kind of my rambling. So perhaps Councilmember Schlueter has something more, but this is really important that we carry this plan out. That's, I guess, my key message.
My other concern on this is we have not had the members that have wanted to serve recently. We haven't really needed this to do anything for the past few years, so it hasn't been critical, but I do feel it's going to get critical going forward to make sure we're acting on what we need to act. One thing I do think we'll have to come up with a way to try to entice residents to want to serve on something like this. We're going to have to promote it better so we can get some people to serve on it. And that's all I have. I'm just concerned that if we dissolve this by us deciding, I don't think the Planning Commission is going to think too highly of that. I think they need to look at this a little closer to see what they want to do and what they'd recommend to us.
How many members do we have on the Planning Commission right now?
7.
And how many fill the commission? Is it 7?
Yeah,
It's full.
Yeah, it's
So
full.
it's full right now. Okay.
Yeah.
And they haven't met in over a year?
So the planning commission has.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
I meant the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, CPAT hasn't met in 27 months.
Okay, and how many people are on comprehensive plan action?
So 5.
And how many are supposed to be on that? 5?
5. Yeah, we've had all of the seats have been vacant for that period of time.
Mayor, I have a couple comments.
Yeah, please.
So one, I do like the suggestion of bringing it back to the Planning Commission and getting their input and having them bring a proposal to council. And then to the point about the annual forum, the Planning Commission had been in discussion about that, but our meetings have been canceled for the last 2 months. So we'll see where that goes, but that has been in conversation.
Well, with that said, do you want to make a motion? Mr.
I'd like to
Schlueter?
make a motion to table this item.
Okay, motion's been made.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, did you intend to also say table it, but refer it to the Planning Commission for a recommendation?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'll second that motion.
Motion's been made to table this action and refer it back to the Planning Commission so they can refine it a little bit. Do we have a second on that motion?
You already got one.
Oh, we did. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Krogman. Any other discussion, comments, concerns? With that, we'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Moving on to comments of appreciation, reports, any commissions or anything you'd like to share with the community, this is your chance. So we will start with Councilmember Krogman.
Thank you. Our electrical provider, of which we're a member of the agency, the Minnesota Municipal Power Agency, MMPA, is planning to offer each of its communities, each of the 12 member communities, an electrical vehicle charging station. Jasper, correct if I'm right, correct me if I'm wrong, rather, this will be able to charge 2 vehicles at a time, is that correct?
Yes, so each station can charge 2 vehicles.
Okay.
Yep.
And then we have asked them for the possibility, which no decision has been made yet officially on, but we're checking the staffing of installing a second unit so that we could charge 4 vehicles at a given time. This would be in the downtown area. It would not be on the new Main Street, the opened Main Street, but rather in the parking lot area that we talked about earlier tonight. one of the issues that came up with MMPA is they're beginning to put those in certain communities. And at the last meeting, we were able to get it resolved that if we want to put this in 2022, we will still be eligible for their program to have one installed. So to be clear, the one unit would be coming from MMPA, and we can do that as late as 2022. If we want to put another one in, we've got some arrangements, and I'll ask Jasper to quickly explain that. It would be to our advantage to do that at the same time, and I'll let you explain how that would work.
Yeah, with the proposed construction next year in that parking lot, that would be the time to install those, and having them be under the same kind of umbrella where they're managed by MMPA. We can set the rates. MMPA has their cost, and then we can set what our cost is. And if we choose, we could choose to not make any money off these and have it be kind of a economic development tool or something like that if we want. But we'll have to formally take some action on this to really solidify that we're going to do it, the extra one, and then have to set the rate that we have each year. So, and really, I think we're talking about something like MMPA's rate is 10 cents a kilowatt hour, and then whatever we want to add on to it, we can. A lot of member communities sound like they're adding 15 cents, but per kilowatt hour. But we'll have to talk about that at council.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. That's very forward thinking there with the MMPA. So thank you for sharing that with us. Moving on to Councilmember Lozey. He's not here tonight. Councilmember Mahoney, anything you want to share?
I don't have anything to share tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Schluter.
A few things. Region 9 Development, June 16th, we had a full board meeting in New Ulm to approve budgets and elect new officers and appoint new board members. I just wanted to point out that Sueur now has a second board member, as Bridget Tuck was approved to fill the school board representative seat. HRA June 23rd meeting, the walkway construction is complete. The final landscaping is underway with a plan, and they're going to be planning an open house after that is done, because right now there are currently 16 vacancies out of the 48 units. Highway 169 Coalition, there was a June 24th Zoom meeting with briefings from Representative Angie Craig and Director of Transportation Margaret Donahoe. Our next meeting is going to be at the Port of Savage in late July, early August. Maybe I can have something to report to them that Sueur might have something going on by then.
Yeah, I think you're referring to the EDA land and the planning that they talked about up there, correct? Yeah, so we will, we might have something by then. City Council may have a pre-plat, final plat to look at by that time, but we are working on it.
Thank you, Councilmember Schluter. Moving on to Councilmember Sullivan. Anything you want to share with us?
We had an EDA meeting tonight. We did authorize a facade loan this evening. The business at, I don't remember the address.
106.
Between
Main
Miller
Street.
and
KMF.
And then we also issued a low interest loan to the new bus company coming to town to help them get their feet on the ground. Other than that, transit, I have been in conversations with the city administrator from St. Peter in regards to if we go into a state shutdown, what happens? Because obviously our grant money stops at that point. We're going to try and continue to operate as usual out of our reserves, and hopefully it only lasts for a few weeks if we see it. So we should be good to go.
Thank you. Councilmember Swanberg, anything you want to share?
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. The mayor has nothing tonight. Administrator Krugel, anything you want to share?
Just, thanks for bearing with us through this construction season. It's been challenging. There's been a lot of detours and getting a lot of feedback about, challenges getting through town, but it's something that we have to do occasionally, and the end product will be a lot better than what we had. So thank everybody for their patience during this time. So that's all I have.
Thank you. We appreciate everybody for being here tonight and the input we received tonight. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to dismiss this meeting.
So moved.
Second. It's been seconded. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you.
Already, the minute that motion was made.